running, I think, kind of saved me, honestly. Like, even before the pro running and all that stuff is like, I just like couldn't even do the things I wanted to do because I was not eating or just being crazy. Like that, like then when I started running, I realized I couldn't actually do this without eating or being healthy. And then that's when it like really snowballed. And then it eventually turned into pro running. But I think at the crux of it all, it was like I was just never okay. And then I started to have a goal and I realized, wow, I can't actually do this if I don't actually fix these underlying problems. And then, yeah, now again, it's grown into something I didn't think. But ultimately, I think it was really just like those decisions cumulatively is like what saved me, like both physically, mentally, like across the board in my life.
Hello, and welcome to Find Your Fuel, the podcast where we bring you stories from women who've overcome different physical, mental, and emotional struggles and found the fuel to live their best lives. I'm your host, Erin Martin, and in today's episode, we sit down with professional ultra runner Hannah Allgood, where she reveals that while achieving podiums and signing a pro contract were major accomplishments, the true victory was the journey of her inner transformation that led to finding her light and her true self again. She bravely discusses her past struggles with body image and eating disorders and how she's navigated these challenges to reach a place of self-acceptance and health in both life and training. We talk about going pro, imposter syndrome, and the healing power of therapy, and her resiliency through it all. Our conversation today is such a powerful reminder that the true win isn't in the destination, but in the journey of growth and becoming your best self.
My name is Hannah Allgood, and I run for Adidas Terex. But yeah, that's kind of one of the craziest things I've probably ever said in my life in a sentence. Just like looking back in my career and my time in this sport is definitely, yeah, I have said this before, but I definitely never thought I'd be here or say those words out of my mouth. And so, yeah, growing up, super active. I've always loved sports, loved being competitive, wanted to win at anything, everything, cards, biking, eating an ice cream cone with my brother as fast as we could, anything. I just wanted to win. And so, yeah, growing up was really soccer and basketball and dance were my big things. And, hated running just like everyone, just
Like
because it
most
was the
soccer
punishment.
players do.
Yeah, it's like the punishment, you, like,
Yeah.
gotta run lines or whatever, and even in basketball, we would have to run, like, half courts, but it would be like, we'd have our whole team standing on, like, the sideline. It would be the classic where it was like, you'd count down, like, every single players would be like 20, 19, 18, but it would count down from, like, like, a little freshman to the seniors, and then if you missed it, we had to run that certain amount of lines, so then
Oh,
obviously the seniors would have, like, 1 line, and then I'm like, "Oh my gosh," and so that was where my not love for running came in, but yeah, and then, like, kind of going out of high school and not playing a competitive college sport was really, changing. I think a lot of us identify as athletes when we're younger, and then when you lose that like identity, you kind of lose part of yourself. And so I was definitely in that bucket of like not really knowing. And so yeah, started like going to the gym and running a little bit, but didn't have a watch, was just like, I don't know. I think the first run I went on, I thought it was like 4 miles. It was a half mile and I walked back. And then it's just progressed over time. Trail running itself, like moved out to Colorado, met my husband, and he was the one that found ultra running. And so then he got into it. And then naturally, as you do, when you have one person that's next to you all the time, you like get into what they're into. And then he got into it. So then he did a trail marathon and then I did a trail 50K. And then it's just continued to like snowball from there into where we are now, which is pretty wild and exceptional and so fun to be a part of.
which going back to that first probable trail run with your husband, though, what was that like?
Well, so the first one we did, it was a 15K in Beaver Creek in Colorado, and it was like an Xterra event, and he was running it, and I was like, I'm just here, like I should just sign up and just do it. And at that point, a 15K for me was like, oh my gosh,
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's no way. And at Beaver Creek, it's a ski hill, so you're like hiking up the downhill, and I remember I ended up getting, like, 4th female, but, like, 1st age group, but I just remember on the downhill, this girl was, like, bombing past me, and I was like, "I can't even run." And it was, like, the dirt, gravel, perfect road, and I was like, "I can't even run faster," and, like, I was so sad I, like, got 4th, but then, I got my age group award, and they're like, "You made it to the world championships for Xterra," and I was like, "Oh my god, am I good at this sport?" And there's probably, like, 10 women in this event, like, I don't even know how many, but that was kind of that same thing of, like, being a little naive and not really knowing what the sport is about. Like, I didn't watch it on YouTube, I didn't, like, really do tons of stuff with social media, and at that time, it was just, like, way outside the wheelhouse, and had no idea that people were running 100 milers already, or like the tradition of the sport. Yeah. And so then I, again, naively was like, I think I'm good. I didn't go to the world champs, which is probably for the better, but that was that little bit of like, maybe I can be good. But again, it was also too, like, I didn't even understand. I didn't even know what Western States was, or like golden tickets, or any of that stuff. So it was kind of a fun little start. And then yeah, I've honestly learned so much, but thankfully I didn't fall in that event. I've fallen plenty of times, but I think if I would have
Ditto.
fallen, I would have been like, "I'm never running again."
This isn't happening again.
Yeah, yeah,
Or at least it was a fun one. I know from personal experience, I've joined my husband on some trail runs,
yeah,
and he'll say, it's 10 miles. You got it.
yes,
Not that much vertical. Like, it's good." And then we get into it, and 18 miles later, you're like,
yeah.
"Why did I trust you? And why am I doing this? I'm not having fun. This is not where it's
See
at."
See, I'm your husband in that situation. Like, all my friends are like, "You said it wasn't that bad." I was like, "It's not that bad. We're almost there." That's 100% how I am, so they never trust me anymore. They're like, "I don't trust you to know." And this is also too in, like, the beginning of, Strava and things like that, where, like, data is, like, all over the place, like, watches weren't awesome, and so, yeah, I was like, "No, on Strava, it said it was only 3,000," and then it was, like, 7,000. You're like, "Oh, oopsies." But I still have sometimes I still feel like I have no concept of kinda like vert sometimes. I'm like, "Is that a lot?" Like, I don't even know, because you get used to just, like, what you're doing day to day, so it's kinda funny.
Yeah, especially in Colorado. I'm in
Yeah.
Denver, so I don't have the epic trails that I can imagine you have out your backyard, like the springs, but they're pretty close. And you can
Yes.
get into some amazing foothills just right outside of Denver, which is amazing.
Yeah, and that's where you're at. I feel like it's just all of a sudden it's kinda similar to Denver. It's like any trail run you start, you're going uphill, and you're like, "Alright, we're just straight into it."
Here we go. Spike the heart rate and hopefully even out a little later.
Exactly, exactly.
So fast forward, you've gotten into ultra running. What was that mental shift like for you as you realized, holy cow, I just tried this new thing. Turns out I'm wildly good at it. What were you thinking through that process?
Yeah, when I first started really getting more into it, it was like I tried to be really strategic by how I did things. Of just like, I know myself, where I am very competitive, but I also, when I hit the mark, I take it pretty hard. And like, I'm pretty hard on myself. It's improved significantly, but I think back in the day, the first 50K I did was in 2019. 2020 is when I did a 50 miler, and that was the first time I, like, raced against a pro runner, and I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna crush it," and, got crushed a little bit, and I was like, "Man, maybe I'm not that good," and so that was, like, kind of the first hit, more to my ego than anything, of, like, maybe I'm actually not what I thought I was, and maybe, wow, these people are so much better than me, and so that kind of was the first knock of, like, all right, I'm not there yet, but I am better than I used to be. And so then tried to really work on, like, shifting that mindset, and then kind of continuing the training, and knowing it's just going to take a really long process. I think being a physical therapist, like, one of the things I say to my patients, like, all the time when I see them, is like, this is going to take a long time. People think PT doesn't work because they do it for 4 weeks and they're like, "Nothing changed." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"I promise you it's really slow and it takes a long time, but, like, you will get there." And I think that's my same mentality with this sport of running, is, like, it just takes a long time, and I did a better job then, even in 2020 and then beyond, of, like, truly my running career has been very short. And so it's like I was comparing myself to someone that was, like, a pro runner, but also, like, was D1 cross country and like worked for the Olympic trials and all these things that I'm like, I don't even know what the qualifier is. And so it took a little bit of like a hit to the ego, but then reframing it and like really figuring out, looking back at like, what did I do and what have I accomplished? And then continuing to try and like stepwise process that up. And then, yeah, put myself against more and more people that I thought were better than me and see where I stacked up. And then taking it more as like a learning lesson of what can I improve on versus like um a negative framework of like, wow, you suck at the sport. So that was like a huge mental shift for me.
Yeah, and I love that thought process of it's going to take a while because any good thing, you have to work the process and get help in knowing what the process is. If you don't know it, it's just so easy to get down on yourself or
Yeah.
not have that perspective of, yes, it might take a year or two of hard work to get there, which sounds like a really long time today, but
Mhm.
it goes by like that. Like it's so fast that you're building the right blocks to get to where you want to go.
Yeah, it's funny because I feel like in my first couple of years of trail running and then even like in 2022, which is when I thought I kind of had my biggest breakout year, I was like, oh, I'm so new. I've only been doing this for 3 years. And now it's kind of funny because I still feel new, but I'm like, okay, Hannah, like now you've been doing this for like 6 years. We're not really like new per se, like,
Not a
you're still
rookie anymore.
learning. Yes, it's like I'm still learning, I'm still growing, and I know I'm still reaching my potential, but it's like you can't quite be like, "I'm brand new to this sport now." You're like, "Oh," and then, yeah, you reflect, I'm like, "Wow, it actually has been quite a long time now." Less compared to others, but, like, you're not in my first few years of this, so.
Yeah. And what was your journey like when you realized recreational running turned pro? Like, what was that process like? And what did that look like when you realized, oh, I can really level up and make this a thing?
Well, I don't think. I definitely went way too hard one direction for a time where I was like, okay, we're gonna, get my coach and get started and do all these things and do every little thing, which is a good mindset. But I lost a lot of like flexibility where like,
Mm.
at the beginning of this trail running stuff, like I said, it was so fun. Like my husband and I just went out and then I became like, if we're not out at 7 a.m., like, this is a waste of a day and my training is screwed
All or
and, like, all
nothing,
these.
so
Yes.
rigid, type A
Yes.
personality coming out.
Yes. And so I think that was the big transition of, like, going kind of recreational to then having, like, okay, I can be a pro, but then, like, after I think my first year being signed, I then realized, like, this is not sustainable. Like, that rigidity of my training and all of that was just, 1, not sustainable from, like, a life and relationship standpoint, but also for me mentally, because I've learned now, like, I feel like within ultras, it's like something's gonna go wrong, probably. Like, who knows? It could be something small, could be something big, but I think having so much more flexibility in my training has just been like, well, all right, I guess today we're gonna run at 3:30. I wanted to run at 10, but like that's where it is. And now it's 90 degrees. And like that sucks. But like now that'll progress me for whatever I need to do. So that would be like kind of I think the biggest change now is like recreational, taking it easy, then going so rigid, and then now realizing like to actually maximize my potential, there needs to be a little bit more wiggle room for that.
Yeah, which I think is such a good metaphor for life too. I
Mhm.
keep hearing about this concept, which I love, of resiliency, with
Mhm.
that almost elasticity and flexibility that a lot of us type A, super structured, if it's not done well and right, then it's not worth it. There is
Mhm.
that happy medium of being able to not let, if you don't eat the right thing, just think that like everything's gone to shit or not get your run in at the right time.
Yeah.
Or God forbid you skip a workout, just being
Yes.
able to handle those challenges in life and be able to move on with still a good mental mindset and not over index on it and let it completely derail you from life.
100%. Yeah, especially, like, eating before races, like, I usually, like, eliminate dairy, like, a day or 2 before, and then all of a sudden, it was like I was eating chicken and rice for, like, a week straight before a race, and I was like, "What am I doing?" Like, it just, like, got to, like, well, if it works for one day, maybe I should do it for a week, and then you're
Yeah.
just like, "No, that's not working." Like, what are we doing? And, yeah, and like you said, I think it's just so important and also important in your own growth of, like, being, yeah, resilient. And I think that's part of our sport in general is like you're going to learn a lot about yourself, but you're also going to learn how to like navigate challenges that maybe you didn't think. And yeah, it's same in life where you're like, wow, I didn't think that would happen, but here we are, so we gotta navigate it. And I think that's also I think with ultra running why I really love it is I like to solve problems and like figure out what to do. And so I don't get too flustered when something goes wrong. Like, of course, the first time I ever puked in a race, I DNF'd. I was like, it's over. Like, I puked one time. I'm never doing it again. And I'm not condoning puking. And there's sometimes, obviously, you need to call it quits. But now when I puke, I'm like, well, all right, that was really crappy, but, like, we can problem solve our way out versus, like and it was just funny. So it was like, "I puked," and everyone's like, "Okay, you're fine." I was like, "I'm not fine. Cut off my wristband." And so, again, it's like, I think you've just learned how to kind of roll with the punches a little bit more, again, both in life, but then, yeah, it's like, well, why did that happen? What can I do to think or, like, how can I learn to do better in those scenarios?
Yeah, and I think that's such a good call out you have on over rotating on something in terms of, oh, if eating clean and chicken and rice and no dairy for one day is good, then 2 weeks must be really good. Or same
Yeah.
with exercising. I
Mhm.
think a lot of us athletic, competitive people think, oh, if I work out 2 hours every day, it must be good to work out 2 hours every day for, however long. Like, just
Mhm.
totally overtraining or overdoing something, not realizing that the key is that balance and not
Mhm.
taking everything to the nth degree, and then kinda end up realizing you've got some control issues, and you're like, "Wow, why like, where is that coming from?" Because at least for me, I'd say there's a performance perspective, I wanna be my best, but then there's also a little bit of a control aspect where I have to unpack where that's coming from.
100%. And I think it's also so challenging in our sport when there's so many positive things again with like Strava and social media, like that's brought so much awareness. But I also think we get stuck in this little bit of like well, now a 50K isn't that far, and you're like,
Yeah.
this person's running 3,000 miles up, and you're like, wait, like amazing that they're doing that. And I want people to always go after their goals. But I think it's important to remember like your goals matter too. And if it's like, I just wanna run a 10K, it's like, great, do that. Because sometimes I think it's like, oh, well, like, the even vert challenges is like, well, this person got 1,000,000 feet of vert in a month, and I'm like, "Well, I got, like, 20,000." So, like, okay, but, like, that comparison, I think, is so hard in all facets of life, but especially in this sport where, again, I catch myself all the time where I'm like, "Oh, just a 50K," and people are like, "Oh, just a 50K." I'm like, "Oh, right, I have to, like, recorrect myself because like that is a really long way and like the average person is like excited to run, 5 minutes. Like even the same thing with my patients that are in high school. They're like, you ran more than a mile, and you're like, oh yeah, like you forget. So I think it's good to remember those things in like this world of like more, or like look at this crazy thing or this hook for someone. It's okay to also like have your goals and like root yourself in those and be excited about what you're doing instead of like seeing what someone else is doing and not feeling like you're enough. And that's again taking a lot of time of too. I know that's like slightly a tangent, but I think it's just easy to like really compare to everybody out there right now.
Yeah, you get stuck in a comparison game when really
Mhm.
everybody's Everest is different. I think about that a lot too because my husband is an ultra runner as well and has done a bunch of 100 milers. So then there is this, it's weird. There's the two sides. I see it's possible, so I know I can do anything, which is great. And then I do often think, well, I'm just running a 12K. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, I need to reframe. That is my Everest, and I am pushing myself so hard and doing so much work, just as much, mental battle and physical battle to accomplish my Everest as someone else. So it's pulling down that comparison game that just naturally, I don't know what the deal is with us humans and why we value it, and especially as women, there's always comparing ourselves to others to validate our worth
Mhm.
in the world.
100%. Yeah, and I feel like I do feel like women tend to do that more than males, but again, it might also just be my perception of the world around because of the people around me. But yeah, it's interesting to like, I've just thought about it a lot, and I thought about it a lot this year because like I raced Western States, and then I turned around and like did OCC, which was like going to be a big stretch for me because I'm like, man, I barely recovered from this, like trying to run fast, and it's an interesting place. I talk about social media. I posted about it because I was like, man, like I got, 13th, which I should have been like, oh my gosh, like this is so sick. Instead, you're like immediately like upset, and it's funny because I'm like, man, Hannah, like thinking again, my career, it's like 4 years ago, I would have been never thought that was even possible. And it's like, I think we always just want that ever moving goalpost, as we all know about. It's like, you just think about it because you're like, well, this person did better than me. And it's like, wow, like, but also you can be proud of like what you've accomplished because it's maybe the hardest thing you've done or like your biggest accomplishment. And I think we forget about that aspect so much as runners, as people in life, but also like females. Yeah, there's always just something else that you're like, well, that's a little bit better over there, even if it's not.
Yeah, not just comparing achievements, but
Mhm.
comparing your body and whether
Right.
you're worthy and self-image there, all the things.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's again another crazy thing. So I feel like you just always are going to be looking at someone else. In the running space, it's always unique. I think ultra running is cool because there is so many different styles and like body types that can be successful at the sport, but it's still something that like unfortunately still goes in your head even when you think you're not thinking about it. I think about it for sure, as much as I've always thought like my legs were strong. Like when the amount of times if I like even this week someone was like, "Wow, like oh my gosh, like you've got Olympic legs." I'm like, "I don't know what that means, but okay." But like anytime someone comes up to me, especially like as a young kid, like I was always super self-conscious of my legs. I've always been strong and soccer player generally, but it's interesting because when people ask me like, "Well, what sport do you play?" They're like, "You must be like a power lifter." And I'm like, actually, I run a lot, and they're like, "Weird," and you're like, they're like, "Mine can't compute that, like, you can look the way I look and, like, run or, like, do that."
Uh-huh.
And even it's really interesting because again, that's still something that now I take it as a compliment when people are talking about me, but it's like, yeah, even 10 years ago, that would probably comment would really mess me up of like, "Wow, I shouldn't be a runner, or I shouldn't do this because I don't look the way that these people look." And yeah, I think it's still something that again, I think my body has changed so many times over life. It seems like I've had 10 different bodies, but it's interesting because even though now potentially from the outside looking in, they're like, "Oh, wow, she looks amazing." But it's still something like I still think about or I still get kind of trapped in this cycle of like that person looks more like a runner, like they're taller than me, or like, wow, if I didn't have, whatever extra weight, maybe it'd be faster. And so it's like interesting because I think the perception on the outside is like people are like, wow, she must be so confident. Like that's the body I want. Meanwhile, me, I'm like, ugh, like I feel uncomfortable or like I don't want to wear jeans or I look stupid in leggings or whatever. It's like you still have that internal dialogue that you're like struggling with.
100%. It's like that if
Yeah.
only I had legs like that, if only I looked like her, then
Mhm.
all these things would be solved and I'd be happy. And
Yeah.
100% no. And also speaking from a place of like you can't just look at someone
Mhm.
and see and understand what's going on, both from a
Mhm.
mental health and physical health perspective. I think it's
Mhm.
really easy to look at images these days, especially on Instagram when you see all these really lean people, amazing muscle, and just think, wow, like they're so healthy. That's awesome. When really you have no idea what mental battles they're going through.
Mhm.
And physically, they could potentially not be healthy at all. That could be
Mhm.
completely unsustainable. And so when you get stuck in this comparison game, I think we're also comparing to something that's not achievable or good for women in
Mhm.
general. So it's like,
Mhm.
not only are we comparing, but we're comparing to something that's just not even worth comparing yourself or striving for.
Yeah, totally, and it's like you just don't know what people are going through or like, different comments may say, and, all that to say, I'm not saying don't compliment people, but I think it's interesting, I think just the perception versus reality of, like, potentially what's going on and, like, Yeah, it's an interesting space to be because same thing, it's like I'll go to a race start and I'm still comparing myself to other people 100%, and I'm like, "This is the fittest I've ever been," and I'm still like, "Ooh, maybe if this was a little bit better," or like, "Oh, maybe if I did that a little different," and that's like a really interesting place to be, as an athlete, as a performer, or in any space, or just, again, being a person walking around.
Yeah. I've also had to shatter my own perception of what
Mhm,
performance looks like. In my
mhm,
mind, it's being lean, being strong, all these things. And I ran my first 50K a few months ago, but I had to majorly fuel up. I had to
mhm,
put on some body fat. I gained
mhm.
muscle and my body changed, but I guarantee the body I have now slayed that 50K. I did way
Mhm,
better than I thought it would. I felt good the whole time. I was like, "Wait, what's
mhm.
happening?" Like, I'm at mile 18 and I still feel good. Like, that would my younger self would have never felt that way because I had a different definition of what an athletic performing body should be like and followed that
Mhm.
versus true performance. I chased aesthetics instead of performance. And when I switched that, feel better, perform better, do better. It's a mental trip, but it's a valuable lesson that I've learned that I will always take with me now.
100%, and I think even within the fueling aspect of running, when Gil and I first started running, like, I don't even take a gel, like, we didn't even have a water bottle, and it's like, well, why am I bonking every single time? Versus now it is such an interesting thing because, I off and on, like, track what I eat to make sure I'm, like, eating enough, like, honestly, it's like, I'm not
Yeah.
trying to I'm like, "Am I at where I need to be for how much I'm running?" Like, but it's interesting now because back in the day, it's like I don't within my intake of a day, like I never add my nutrition on my run. I don't put that into like my big, bold actually eating. And it's funny because it's like, yeah, when you think of fueling, because now I'm eating like, I don't know, 1,500 calories a run, like
Yeah.
depending on how long it is, of course. And it's
Mhm.
like, old me would have been like, "I can't eat for the rest of the day," versus now
Yep.
it's like, "No, you still need to have that, like, huge smoothie after that has carbs and protein, and you need to do that," versus that yeah, that younger version of me would avoid that recovery shake or avoid a meal because I was like, "No, I just ate so much during my run, why would I need that?" But then you're realizing you're actually hindering your performance by not fueling yourself after, and then the next day you're tired, you're like, "Well, why am I so tired?" It's like, because you didn't actually fuel your body, and I think that's a huge shift right now, and I think in this last year, especially with, like, just the change in people talking about what they're having during their runs is like, yeah, you actually are like, "Wow, I do feel good because I actually helped my body perform well," and that is a hard, I think, mental shift at the start is like, okay, and I was the same way, like, when I first started running and did a marathon, I was like, "I wanna lose weight and be skinny," and
Yeah.
then I wouldn't eat anything, and then now I'm like, "I'm trying to not lose weight, I wanna be the same weight, like, how can I eat more?" And, like, if you would've told me that, like, I would be eating what I'm eating now, I would have been like, "Gosh, how can I even do that?" So it's interesting that perspective of, yeah, changing and how important it is, and I also think, like, in endurance sports, but even longevity of, like, being healthy, it's like you need to fuel your body correctly. It's just like, I don't know. I laugh when I first joined a gym and I was like they're like, "Well, what's your fitness goal?" And I was like, "I don't really have a fitness goal. I just, like, I wanna be healthy when I'm 80." And I think that's another reason, especially with, like, fueling and training and strength training. It's just like, I want to be that 80-year-old out hiking and doing cool stuff. Like, I'm not gonna do it as fast as I'm doing it now, but, like, that is more important to me than, like, maybe being whatever fake aesthetic I think I want to be.
Yeah, 100%. And same with it's similar to how I feel with being a mom. I want to
Mhm,
be able to go on a run and
mhm.
then not need to sleep on the couch the rest of the day because I don't have the energy for my kids. That's the
Yes.
worst scenario in my mind is
Mhm,
that I do something for myself selfishly, but then can't or don't have the energy to be able to give back to them. And
mhm.
it's interesting because I similarly experienced I think I would go on runs and have 1 gel,
Yeah.
in 2 hours or something. Like, just not a lot. And so
Yeah.
I experimented with every 45 minutes, try to have
Mhm.
a gel or 100 calories or whatever it was, and then every half hour and just played with it. And
Mhm.
holy cow, it makes such a big difference to your run that day to feel good. And then afterwards, like you're saying, to continue to have that energy to show up for your family, your friends,
Mhm.
your brain be clear to show up for work or whatever it is. And there's just so many parallels between, yes, that's a running scenario, but you need to fuel yourself even if
Mhm.
you're not an ultra runner for life. I
Mhm.
think so many women chase this, what's the least amount of calories I can get in the day and the most
Mhm.
amount of output to burn calories, and that
Mhm.
equation is messed up. You're not
Yeah.
fueling yourself for life.
Yeah, I mean, when I first started, like I feel like if when I first started counting my calories, I was probably like, gosh, 16, I mean, and it was, like, on MyFitnessPal, and it was like, "I
Yeah,
want
yes.
2 pounds a week," and it was like, "You should eat 1,100 calories a day," and I'm like, "Okay, that's,
Oh
like,
god, that's so bad.
that is so bad," and it's like, it's taken, now 12, 13, 14 years to, like 15 I don't know, forever to, like, retrain your brain, and again, same, like, process, but I do think that's, like, really challenging is because I think we've continued to think like, "Oh, I'll just eat less and less and less, and, like, that'll mean I'll get thinner and thinner and thinner." It's like, well, that's not really how, like, the energy balances work. Like, yes,
Yeah,
to some point, it's calories in, calories out, but, like, we've gotten to the point where people are like, "I'm only eating, 800 calories." I'm like, "How are you breathing right now?"
literally.
Like, yeah, I
You
mean,
burn more than that just
yeah.
being awake if you sat on a couch.
Totally. I mean, one of the dumbest things I ever did was in college, I was in this, like, making, I can't the class was, like, making a fitness plan or something, so it was, like, how to become a like, personal trainer, essentially, and you at the beginning of the semester, you, like, weigh yourself, and at the end of the semester, you're gonna weigh yourself, and this was at a time where, like, I would say my eating disorder was, like, at the height of it, and it was, like, 2 weeks before we're gonna, like, re-weigh ourself, and I, like, weigh myself, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I haven't lost any, like, weight following these plans and these diets because we were, like, tracking and all the things,
Oh,
and
no.
I literally just, like, went on the lemonade diet, which was literally water, lemon juice, like, cayenne, and
A
maple
little bit of
syrup.
honey. I've done that once.
Yes. My god,
So
just 2
bad.
weeks. I'm like a junior in college, like,
Yeah.
just drinking that. That's all I had for 2 weeks, and then I weighed less, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it worked." I was like, "That is so crazy to me." Like, I feel like I'm a pretty rational person, and I was like, "Hannah, you were, like, playing soccer and, like, going to the gym and,
That's crazy
taking
that you worked out during it.
taking tests and, like, trying to do these things," and I'm like, "Wow," I was, like, really that was when I was like, "I need to talk to a therapist about this because, like, this is not okay." Like, it's just insane the things that we, like, did,
Oh, yeah.
I feel like nowadays there's a little less of that, like, crazy dieting, but even just, like, after that, when I was in my 20s, my roommates and I, like, we, like, drank skinny tea and things that are just like, this isn't even a like, it no, this is so unhealthy, but we, like, justified in our mind that this was, like, a good thing to do, and, yeah, I think honestly too, that's, like, where running, I think, kinda saved me, honestly, like, even before the pro running and all that stuff is, like, I just, like, couldn't even do the things I wanted to do
Mm.
because I was, like, not eating or just, like, being crazy, like, literally doing just crazy things that, like, then when I started running, it was just, like it was more about, like, again, not I think initially it was, like, losing weight, and then I realized I couldn't actually do this without eating or being healthy, and then that's when it, like, really snowballed, and then it eventually turned into pro running, but I think at the crux of it all, it was like I was just never okay, and then I started to have a goal and I realized, wow, I can't actually do this if I don't
Mm.
actually fix these underlying problems. And then, yeah, now again, it's grown into something I didn't think, but ultimately I think it was really just like those decisions cumulatively is like what saved me, like both physically, mentally, like across the board in my life. And so it's interesting now thinking about podiums and I wanna win all these big events, but, like, really when we, like, really dive deep into that, it was really just like, no, it was about, like, saving me as a person and, like, who I was. So, it's kind of interesting to, like, when I really peel back the layers to kind of find that beginning.
I love that. And so what did your eating disorder look like then? So
Yeah, it's really, I think when we think of, I think especially like eating disorders and runners, it was like I was like the direct opposite. Like before my last year of high school, I was really into basketball and I was like, I want to do anything to like be the best I can be at basketball. I like went to before school, I would shoot hoops before school at the school, and then I would, like at night, I would, like, go run a little bit, like, "Okay, I need to be fit," and then I, like, started eating a little bit less, and so this is all when I was, like, 17, 18, and then I remember it very distinctly because I tried on these jeans that I hadn't tried on in a while because I didn't weigh myself, I didn't weigh my food, I just was like, "I'm trying to be really, really get into this shape," and it was before my 18th birthday, and one of my siblings was with us at the time at home and just said to me, like, because the jeans were really loose on me, and they said, "Are you anorexic?" And that was, like, the first time that I thought I was like, "Am I?" Like, I don't know. And then my next memory from there essentially is, like, my 18th birthday. I was home alone, parents were gone, and I ate an entire bag of, like, the pumpkin Reese's, because obviously they're delicious. But I ate the entire bag on my birthday, sitting in the living room, and then I was like that was the first time I was like, "Oh, no." And then this is when I got into baking, and I would literally, like, bake stuff every week for my class, like, just these like, one of my favorite things I cooked this, like I don't even know how I ate this, but it was, like, brownies and cookie and cheesecake layer, like, something it was delicious, but, like, so much sugar, and I also remember, like, I would go to school, and I would just, like, eat it in my locker, like, I would make it for people, but I wouldn't even, like, give it to people because I always got to school early, so no one knew I brought it, and then I would just sit there and eat it, and, like, I remember going into the, like, bathroom, it was, like, every 3 days, I just, like, would binge everything, eat everything
Mhm.
I could see, and I just remember, like, sitting in the bathroom and, like, crying and, like, I can't have one day that I was, like, eating normal because I would binge, and then I wouldn't eat for a day, and then I would bin like, it was like I remember just tallying, like, "Can I make it 24 hours without eating everything, but also hiding it from everyone?"
Mhm.
And so that was, like, really the start of it, and that just, like, continued throughout college where I always, again, identified as this athlete, and then all of a sudden, like, the beginning of my senior year to the end of my senior year, it was, like, a difference of, like, 40 pounds probably. Like, I was still athletic, of course, but, like, it was a huge change,
Yeah.
and that was, like, probably one of the hardest things, like, ever, you know? But then it took literally, like, now, again, it's been 15, 16 years of, like, figuring out what works for me and how to grow and how to be okay. But, like, I have so many memories of even in college, like, not going to parties, not going to hot tubs, not going out to hang out with my friends, like, not going on a date, not talking to a boy, like, I didn't even, like, date anybody in college because I was like, "Well, no one could think I'm beautiful, no one could love me, like, no one would ever think I'm attractive," like, all of these things, and that was literally my entire college career, like, from undergrad, like, through grad school. That was just, like, a very turbulent time for a lot of reasons, and, like, at that time, I had only shared this, like, with one of my close friends, and she's still my really close friend now. Yeah, it was like I was like, "I can't even go a day without thinking about this or, like, doing this thing," and then me being the problem solver is like, "I can't even fix myself, and I'm not okay, and I can't even, like, be okay or do these things." And so, yeah, it was really a hard time and also a time that I just was like, early 20s at this point in grad school. I was like, 22 to 24, where I was just like, didn't know who I was, but also just was like, if this is your 20s, like this sucks. Like I hated it. I was like, I'm hate myself. I am worthless. Like if this is life, like I don't wanna do it. I don't wanna do this
Mhm.
for the rest of my life. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to think back to those times because it was like so hopeless and so like I put up with so much, like eventually, dated someone that like, gave me the bare minimum, like horrible, but I was like, well, if this person loves me and I, whatever. And it was just so bad because I just didn't even know who I was. Yeah, it's something that took, again, so many years of therapy and, like, dietitians and talking to people and figuring out what works, and it wasn't like a quick transition. And I remember at that time reading like one of the bloggers, like, what me as a 30 whatever to my 20-year-old self. And I remember
Mm.
reading that and I'm like, this is stupid, yeah, whatever. And now I'm here 34 and I'm like, man, I like wish I could, hold that past part of myself, like, and just like hug her and be like, it'll be okay. Because it was like there just was no light at the end of the tunnel ever. No goals, no anything. Like I just thought life kind of sucked and I didn't want to do it anymore, to be honest. And it's taken so much time. And that's where I think the other side of like running saved me is like I found something new. I found something I loved. And like that was why it was so important. Is like pro running was never the goal. And that's like I know that sounds like crazy to people from the outside because they're like, wow, you're doing this thing. It's like it's cool that I got there, but, like, that wasn't the point. That wasn't like, the point was to, like, find a purpose for me, find who I want to be, but, like, also figure out what is this cool life that I can, like, really love. And now it's taken me, again, so many places, but it's like, yeah, there was just, like, so much darkness in me where I think now people are like, "Well, like, you're so kind and so bubbly and talkative," and, like, yeah, I am, but it's also like there is so much past that people just don't know of like how bad it was and how bad again, I hated myself and didn't want anybody to even know who I was. Like couldn't be myself because I thought whoever I was, like people wouldn't want to be like my friend or like know me for me. And so yeah, it's been a really interesting transition, and I'm so grateful again that I'm no longer down there, but it's also like, yeah, it's something like eating disorder wise now, it's like, it's crazy because it feels like a different person. I am very mindful of like, I have to, part of the reason I do, like I said, track is like, I want to make sure that I'm fueling my body and like taking enough fuel in. And it's easy for people to say, like, well, you look great. And I'm like, yes, thank you. But also like now when people meet me, they just don't ever you meet someone new and you can never think that they were any different than they are right now.
Mhm.
And there's, people that will make comments like, "You don't eat cookies." I was like, "Oh, I eat cookies. Believe me, I do." But, like, there's a reason why I make these decisions or how I do things because I know and I've learned from how I behave to, like, make it to where I am now. Yeah, and it's something that's everybody's different too, And I think for me, it really did come to a place of, like, self-hatred, realistically, not knowing who I was, not knowing who I wanted to be, but also, like, just thinking you weren't worthy of anything and, like, wasn't worthy of love, like, I can be good at my job because 'cause I'm smart because I can work at that, but, like, people don't wanna be my friend or people don't wanna love me for who I am, so then you become something different, and so, yeah, and that was something too, like, with even eating disorder stuff, I love my parents, we're very close, but, like, they didn't understand it, like, my dad doesn't get it. My mom is like, "Just eat less," and I'm like, "Thanks, mom."
Yeah.
And I think those are the aspects where it's like you try to like let people in and then, unfortunately they're not licensed to help me with that. And so it's like then you get that feedback and you're like, well, I'll just not talk to anybody about it and I'll just keep hiding this part of me and pretend everything's okay and like yeah, it's a different mentality to be at, but now I think yeah, you still think about it. Again, for sure, and there's that little part of me too, even with ultra running, I'm like, I love it because I also eat whatever I wanna eat, like, I don't have to think about it, and, like, that's, disordered in its own way that I'm still trying to, like, sort out and figure out, which is why I have a dietitian on my team to be like, "Hey, am I hitting these numbers?" I'm like, "Do you see what I'm doing?" Or, like, what can I tell an expert? Because I'm yeah, just also someone that I'm not an expert in all the areas, so it's like, if I can bring someone on that actually knows what they're talking about, then, like, it's not the blind leading the blind or, like, me, like, "I read an article, what do you think?" It's like, you tell me what to do, like, I'm very teachable, so it's like, tell me what to do, and, like, I will follow that to a T. But, yeah, it's again taken so many years, like, again, almost 20, it's crazy to think about. And then, yeah, you get back to these same points and then people comment on your body and then you're like, "Thank you. I know that's a compliment, but that's just still in my that like last little folder in my brain is like, oh, my thighs are too big." It's crazy. my last little tangent is like I saw this thing on Instagram. It was like I don't know who, I don't follow her, but it was like her posted she posted like a running photo and it was like or a video and it was like zoomed in on her like thighs or her stomach and she's like imagine thinking like instead of being so proud of myself all I'm thinking about is like how do my thighs look in this photo.
Mm,
And I was like, "Man, that, like, really hit home where it's crazy because
yes.
we all do." It's
Yeah.
like the down step and you're like, "Oh my gosh, like, I look like that." And you're like, "No, no, no," like, but it's like instead of being proud of your achievement, you're like, "Oh, I need the up step so I look like this sort of way." And, like, yes, it's maybe more aesthetically pleasing, but, like, it's crazy that, especially as women, we're like, "Oh, really? Like, that's what my thighs look like? Like, oh my gosh," instead of being like, "Wow, I just ran this thing, like, that's incredible." And yeah, I just think that's crazy. And I also being at local events, seeing families that they're just excited about their, father or brother or someone finishing. I'm like, we lose such sight of like the most important aspect a lot of times. So
100%. Even with just everyday or, women or moms in pictures, I
yes.
find, it's like, where is the proof of mom? A lot of people just hide from being in photos because they
Yeah.
don't want to be photoed or have to look at themselves. And it's like, where have we gotten to that we don't want
Yeah.
to be captured living a beautiful
Mhm.
life with our kids because we're too
Mhm.
scared of what the image is going to look like? And we're too
Mhm.
scared to soak that image in.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah, and I
sad.
mean, I feel like as you get older as women, I'm not a mom yet, but it's like, man, that's like so crazy that we can even do that and like so cool and like amazing that our bodies are able to do that. And it's like remembering that aspect too of like we can do so many amazing things is like give your body a little love back, like
Hell
give
yeah.
it just a little bit and like yeah, it's like something that you have to work on every day. Like one thing I really work on in general, like in more like sports psych realm, like I have like they're called credits, but like I do this in the running realm and then I do this outside of the running realm of like so like maybe a credit is like I ate a good breakfast before I ran. I don't know. Something like that. But like then on the non-running realm, it's like, I accepted the compliment or I bought these jeans that I didn't think I would wear. And so it's interesting because I've worked a lot of like changing your brain essentially. It's like I used to
Mm.
just kind of think of all the negative things, but instead like these credits, what they focus on is like give yourself credit for the little things of like what you're doing day to day to like make things better and like it can be anything you want. It's like, I raked the leaves today and I hate raking the leaves. Like, I don't like it. But I think there's a space for that. And truly, it's kind of almost like a gratitude journal. But I think for me, I used to do a gratitude journal, but it was like a little too like, I just felt like I was always saying the same things, so I was like, "Okay, what's something in my day that I can write that I'm proud of my day?" And so then it's like every day you have a list of these things, like whether again running related or not, or just life is like, I'm proud of these and like say you're a mom, you're tired, but like, but I made dinner or like whatever, I made the bed. It can be anything. And I think we forget to like say thank you to ourselves for like all the little things we do in the day because we just do them and we don't think about them.
And I love that you can take something that's from the running world and from a
Mhm.
sports psychologist to apply it to your personal life. I think
Mhm.
there's so often, to what you said earlier, of get the help, get the support, get the
Mhm.
experts who know what they're talking about on your
Yeah.
team. I've used a
Yes.
nutritionist before who's helped me wildly have a different viewpoint on things and how I should approach stuff. So, was that part of your healing journey then? What did your healing journey kind of look like?
Yeah, totally. So I've always been a big fan of therapy in general. And so, I did have a therapist for a while that was like more specific to like life and things. And like that was for probably 5, 6 years, 7 years on and off. And then now kind of have transitioned a little bit more into sports psych. But the nice thing is like for me, it's really relationships are really important to me, and I get to close to people that I really want in my circle, and I'll just tell them everything and anything and talk about it because I know they have my back, but it kind of now sports psych has kind of blended into, like, even more, like I don't wanna say, like, life coach because that doesn't fit it, but, like, she also knows everything that's going on in my life and how that
Mhm.
impacts sport, and that was really valuable to me is because it's like, "Hey, if I've say I had, like, this huge argument with my sibling or at work with my boss or whatever, it's like, I'm not gonna perform my best, so it's like that was really important. So we've been able to blend a lot more of it, of like it's still a sports psych focus, but it also is like, yeah, what is this comparison game that you're talking about when you're standing at a start line and thinking about like, well, they look more like a runner than me, and like how does that fit into sports psych? But then how does that fit into your more like day-to-day life? And because sport is a big part of my life, but it's not my life. And so I still need the tools to like live the life I want to, because if I don't actually have the foundation of my life in a good place, like you're not going to perform well. So it's really, yeah, about like blending that. And yeah, sports psych has been, again, really beneficial because it's blending. And that's what I think I was missing when I did more traditional therapy, was like we were really just focused on life. And my therapist at that time, like she was great. And she was like, I don't do sports therapy. So like I'm not the person to go to for this. So I was like, great. And so I was like, I need to challenge myself to find that person that I really connect with that can, yeah, blend it a little bit more. So has a better understanding of it all. Cause otherwise it's like we're working on this, but we're like not having this piece. So then we don't actually get them together.
Oh my gosh. Well, all the hard work you've done has turned you into such a light. So you should be so proud of the woman you are today, because my immediate reaction or thought of you when I first met you was just such a positive, happy, supportive person. So I love that you found that true self in yourself today.
Mhm. Yeah, it's taken, and again, it takes a long time. I think that's what I always try to tell people, and what we even talked about at the beginning of this. It's like all of these things take so long, and I think we don't give ourselves enough time to actually like find the thing we want it to be ready. I'm the same way. I mean, I ordered something from Amazon last night to get here this morning. Like I get it. I
Yeah.
want it at the same time, but it's like just again a cue of like not giving up, and even thinking about those graphs where it's like, we always think the progress is like this, but really it's like, but you're constantly going up to what you want to get to. And yeah, I just always hope people can like find those little aspects that they're excited about and like just keeps them motivated to keep going, because that's really what's going to get them to their final like spot of where they want to be. And then they'll look back and like, wow, I passed my first goal like 5 years ago, and now I'm over here looking back at my goals. And so it's like, make sure you have that goal, but then be able to look back and just see how far you've come, because I guarantee you've made progress, even if it feels like not a lot.
And it's a journey, not just a destination. So,
Yes, always. There's always more, and there's always something right around the corner. So, yeah.
oh, I love it. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on. I'm curious, what races do you have coming up then?
Yeah, I've got one more for the year. So I guess this is probably the first time publicly I've said this. So I'm going to do JFK 50 miles. So this might be out before, after. So, but I haven't actually talked about it. So that's what I'm doing, something fast and fun to end the year.
Love it. And where can people find you at?
Yeah, you guys can find me on Strava, Hannah Allgood, and then on Instagram at She's Allgood 21. I do have a Facebook. I don't go on it. It's not very interesting. Don't find it.
Same here. It's like a
Yeah.
proof of life, but I have two
Yes.
friends and don't post.
Yes. I'm like, I haven't done anything on there since probably like when I changed like, I'm married. Yeah. But awesome.
Love it. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This has been wonderful.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Find Your Fuel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how this story resonated with you and anything else you'd like to hear more of in the future. And if you want to support us, please write a review. It's super helpful in getting new people to discover the show and help other women find the fuel to live their best lives.